Monday.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Canyon City Planning Commission meeting, Wednesday, February 27th, 2019. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and I failed to mention, I now call this meeting to order. Denise, will you please call roll?
Certainly. Good evening. Chairman Maloney,
Here?
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Harmon,
Here.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Here.
Commissioner Shagley,
Here.
Commissioner Brandon Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Randy Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to ask for approval of minutes. We have two sets of minutes. It seems like a long time ago. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes from November 28th, 2018 Planning Commission and January 23rd, 2019 Planning Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes from November 28th regular meeting.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
Okay, before we call roll, did anyone have any corrections? Okay, Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Harmon,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux, Commissioner Shagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Brandon Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4A, we have a public hearing. Rezoning of 2800 Central Avenue. I open this public hearing. The provisions of the City Municipal Code, and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as if set forth verbatim. Patrick, can we have a staff report, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. First of our public hearings this evening is a request to rezone the property located at 2800 Central Avenue to C General Commercial. The subject property is a 1.39 acre parcel located at the northeast corner of Central Avenue and Field Avenue. Originally subdivided in 1982, this property is currently vacant and undeveloped. It has one access to Central Avenue near the east end of the property. The site is dominated by native grasses on the southerly two-thirds of the property. The northerly one-third experiences a topological fall and contains native shrubs. It should be noted that Field Avenue, adjacent to this property, has been improved to its arterial four-lane configuration. Also, it should be noted that there was an attempt to rezone this parcel to commercial in 2001, which was withdrawn by the applicant at the time. The subject property is currently zoned R3, high-density residential. Under R3, the property is allowed up to 10 dwelling units per acre density, and in a building with more than 9 units can go up to 100 feet in height. The property is bordered to the north and east by additional R3 zoning. The zoning to the south and west is R2, medium-density residential, which allows for 4 to 8 dwelling units per acre. Existing large lot residential in the vicinity is what has been built historically. The R2 appears to have been established in anticipation of possible future re-subdivisions of the area to create additional lots. The applicant seeks to change the zoning on the subject property to C General Commercial. At the moment, the applicant has not provided a site plan, so we do not know what commercial use this property may be put to should a zone change be approved. Section 17.40 of the Canyon City Municipal Code governs how zoning amendments are to be evaluated and establishes 3 criteria against which rezoning requests should be evaluated. Of these 3 criteria, as my staff report indicates, this rezoning request did not meet the standard for the first 2 criteria. The third criteria has to do with establishing a community-related use. Staff has interpreted this to speak to the creation of small-scale, neighborhood-serving commercial uses. Most communities incorporate some provision in their master plan to separate differing scales and focuses of commercial: regional drawing, community drawing, and neighborhood drawing. Canyon City's master plan focuses only on the regional drawing commercial areas along Highway 50, Main Street, and South 9th Street that is silent on the issue of smaller scale commercial. In situations where the master plan does not provide specific goals or policies to guide land use directions, staff will typically default to precedent for guidance. In 1998, the Whitney annexation at the intersection of 15th and Central Avenue set a precedent for the establishment of neighborhood-serving commercial. The small-scale type of commercial generally has the draw of 1 to 1.5 miles to encourage shorter trips and greater pedestrian opportunities. The radius from the Whitney annexation stops just short of Field Avenue. Central and Field is also an arterial-on-arterial intersection. Establishing a neighborhood commercial node at Central and Field would provide convenient retail access for areas north, east, and south of this location. Now, staff does not believe that it is appropriate that the entire full range of uses within the commercial zone district be made available at this particular location, rather that it be a tailored expression of the possibility for commercial that is situated specifically to support neighborhood convenient retail uses. And with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission cite the 4 findings of fact as included in the staff report as a certification of Canyon City's jurisdiction to act on the request to rezone 2800 Central Avenue to C General Commercial. Staff also recommends Planning Commission recommend that City Council approve the request to rezone 2800 Central Avenue, subject to limiting the list of permitted uses to those of a neighborhood-serving scale, specifically accessory buildings and uses, bakeries, car wash, eating and drinking establishments, financial institution, food cart or truck subject to proper permitting under 17.20.125, gasoline station, personal services, professional offices, retail commercial use, wireless facilities subject to proper licensing under 17.12.130, with no conditional or special review uses permitted, and all bulk and yard requirements as specified in the C General Commercial District language in 17.12.130, paragraph C. That would conclude the staff report. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions Planning Commission may have. Present to speak on behalf of this is the applicant, Ms. Vicki Pullen.
Okay, should we start let's start with questions from the commission. Are there any questions of staff?
I guess I have one. What kind of commercial business can we not use it for? It looks like you covered just about everything.
Well, if you look in your agenda packets, one of the attachments to the staff report is the full-range text of all of the uses there that would include much broader, warehouse-type commercial uses, uses that we think in terms of scale are just inappropriate at this location. You can see those have been redacted out of this recommendation.
Right. I see one that says retail commercial use. That just about covers everything.
Well, and that's because our code just defines a definition for retail service establishments. It doesn't specifically begin breaking them out into
Right.
the various forms of retail. The code assumes retail is retail.
Commissioner Ledoux.
Thank you. So Central Avenue is not at its arterial design, is that correct?
That is correct.
And so would there be, issues with right-hand turn lanes, left-hand turn lanes, that type of thing for this parcel?
Well, my understanding is there will probably be, obviously, widening that has to occur, additional lanes, whether there will be dedicated turn lanes, either for left turns or right turns. I'd have to defer to our city engineer on that one. I do know that until we get an actual site plan and we know what sort of a use is going to be proposed and therefore the sort of traffic generation that it might generate, we will have to analyze where they take access to either Field or Central as a part of that site plan application.
Yeah, that would be when we consider it as a site plan design time.
Patrick, I just have in looking through this, I have first most the consideration of the safety of the children. A lot of children walk along that route, and there's not sidewalks that are proper from Central Avenue down Field Avenue going south. So depending on one business or up to 12 businesses, you know, that influx of so much extra traffic could have a huge impact on what already they have crossing guards there, et cetera. I'm wondering if it would warrant someday some kind of a traffic light or something. Yeah, it's down the future, I agree, but of course, the students, I just see them coming and going daily. That's my number one concern.
The rezoning of the property, absent an active use, won't change the traffic conditions that are there now. Obviously, when we get to the point where there is a use established and we could begin talking about real numbers for traffic generation, that's when we can begin talking about the possibility for improvements to the intersection to include either a signal or maybe a traffic circle.
Understand.
Jerry? I do have a question on that. You were talking about not changing the traffic flow and everything. Being that 2 times a day, sometimes even 3, that's a real heavy traffic intersection. When you talk about the site plan, I guess the theory I'm thinking about in that is, and a question I have is, would it make sense to, since we just redid that part of Fields, would it make sense to limit that access to Office Central at this time because of the widening of Fields and the curb and sidewalk?
Yeah, again, that's something that we would not address during zoning time. That's something that gets addressed at site design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just discussing the zoning. Any development there would warrant additional review. We can't just guess.
Right.
That's because we don't know what's there. Looking through this, I could go either to a bakery or a sexually oriented business. So, you know, so I don't know what kind of commercial use we're looking at, so it
I
kinda
think
depends.
we redacted the SOBs.
That's not included.
It's not redacted on mine, I'll redact it.
Well, I think my concern there was if you put a filling station at that corner on that location, that would definitely complicate that intersection.
I mean, it would, I mean, the roadways are intended for that use, and so they would be designed for that use if that happened. You know, to speak to the traffic, traffic is typically designed and operated off of peak hours, and actually something like a retail operation, the peak hours are actually less than if this were a high-density residential property. So a high-density residential property probably would affect those peak hour times during the school pickup drop-off times rather than, you know, more than actually a retail business would.
I agree with that.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
I guess one more. I've been through there many times, and I thought it'd be a great place for something. I don't know what. I never really envisioned what it would be, but it's a great location. How did you determine this list of what we would consider acceptable?
We started with the full range of uses that are permitted in C commercial, and then we just began redacting ones that we thought, in terms of the scale of the amount of space that a building might have to take up, in terms of the scale of the amount of traffic that it might generate, it would be inappropriate at this location. And that's what's included in the staff recommendation on the last page of the staff report.
And was this discussed with the owner? Was it did you refer to other communities, zoning? Did you?
We have conversed with the owner about this. Vicki Pullen is obviously here this evening. She can speak on her behalf as well. But she is not in opposition to this.
We'll have her come up and talk. Yes, Councilman Hamrick.
Thank you. So as I understand it, if the existing zoning would allow residential, high-density residential units up to 100 feet in height,
That is correct.
and the requested change would place a limit of 55 feet in height, is that also correct?
That is correct.
And what is the maximum residential density then that could be put on this property?
Under R3, the maximum permitted, now they could obviously go for some sort of a PUD to potentially increase this, but under the R3 zone, they could do a maximum of 10 dwelling units per acre.
And we've got
1.39, so 139 units.
12, 13 units then. And if you had 2 cars per unit, then there's another 25 cars using that intersection or so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, would the applicant, Ms. Pullen, would you like to come up and speak to us, please?
Good evening. My name is Vicki Pullen. I'm the applicant requesting rezoning of the subject property from R3 to commercial. As of right now, I am not developing anything on the site. I am merely wanting to rezone it to commercial. As an investor, I'll talk about it. As an investor, I looked for various properties that with some vision and monetary input can benefit the surrounding neighborhoods. The property may be a rundown, neglected older home that's an eyesore to neighbors. Nobody's maintaining the yard or the house and reflects negatively on the area. I invest time and money to rehab the house and landscape and contribute to a nice neighborhood. In this case, the property's vacant land adjacent to more vacant land. The weeds grow, trash consolidates in those weeds, mosquitoes and rodents reproduce and become a nuisance. Property owners are supposed to maintain even vacant land, but we all know that everyone does not always comply. It's then up to the city to clean up the properties, lien the property in order to get reimbursed for the expense. Vacant, unattended land can invite vagrants, homeless, vandalism into the neighborhoods, as well as mice, and as we all know, lots of skunks. The northeast area of Canyon City has grown a lot in the last 25 years. There's new schools, new housing subdivisions, mobile home parks, more pedestrian traffic and vehicle traffic. However, new conveniences have not developed to accommodate the needs of that growth. I realize that not everyone in the area wants to see growth at all, but many do. Families are busier with work, activities, and life in general. The more convenient things are, the less time it takes to get everything done, and you can enjoy your families. Change happens. City ordinance requires rezoning notice to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Although not required, I personally went door to door to speak with the neighbors to see if I could address any issues about this action or any concerns they might have. Some were home, some were not. Some of the input I received was increased traffic is a concern, current traffic is a concern. A city park for kids and dogs would be really nice, or a convenience store so you could walk across the street without driving and get milk and bread or coffee and donuts. And just don't block the views. Some neighbors are not aware that the current R3 zoning already allows for high-rise density, as Patrick explained. Or it could be more mobile home parks, townhouses, new subdivisions, and high-rise apartments. Larger numbers of people coming and going 24 hours a day, and increased traffic. Under the current R3 zoning, various stores and businesses can already be permitted with special review by the city. There's a long list of allowed uses with no rezoning necessary at this time if somebody wants to develop right now. And there is already commercial zoning and active businesses approximately 400 feet to the north at Field and Elizabeth. After a lot of discussion with my husband, I decided the highest and best use for this property is rezoning to commercial. The site is located on a double arterial road intersection. The customer base is already established as a lot of people travel these two roads daily, which is a huge attraction for any incoming businesses. The property not only provides the opportunity for needed community service, but gives the city the ability to place requirements for maintenance of the improvements. So, high-rise apartments, greenhouses, utility distribution elements, or small mini retail center, bakery and coffee shop, professional offices, or other conveniences that will benefit the neighborhood. There's so many opportunities. What would your preference be? In conclusion, there are many options for development. Times are changing, and so is our economy. Growth happens. Development needs changes as families and neighborhoods mature. I hope you will support this zone request and submit to City Council for approval. Thank you. Are there any questions for me?
Thanks, Ms. Pollan. Let's see if we have any questions for you. Any questions of the applicant from the commission? Doesn't look so.
Well, I have one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on.
You attempted this once before?
No, that wasn't me.
That wasn't you, it was somebody else who owned
That
that
was
property.
way back, I think, before the recession, or way back, many years
All right.
ago.
Well, you've done your homework. Nice job.
Thank you.
One comment, I guess not so much for her, but for us, is that the land over to the right, to the east of that, is going to be 5 single-family units that we talked about toward the end of the last year. Just so something to think about as far as continuity with the neighborhood. Again, I've been by there many times, and I think something needs to be there, because I have to say I agree with you. I also think that we, as a community, need to work on our commercial zoning a little bit and redefine, just to make it a little easier to do this kind of thing, like you alluded to, Patrick.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Pollan. We have 3 requests to speak to the commission, and I'll just call you guys up. Marie Vernaski. Sorry if I said your name wrong. Vernarski. We're gonna do 3 minutes. Limit it to 3 minutes, if you don't mind.
3 minutes, I couldn't even address everything she had to say about the neighborhood that I live in. It's nice to know that somebody knows what we need and what we want. If you are willing to accept, before I speak, I don't know how I did these two. I canvassed our neighborhood from Orchard, not on Orchard.
Ma'am,
If you don't.
I need you to just speak up at the microphone when you...
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, leave those and then talking to the mic, that's how we record it.
Need you to speak into the microphone.
Okay. This isn't something the neighborhood wants. I canvassed, as you can see, from Central to Pear, from Orchard to Field Avenue. And I went to just about every door there. A lot of people weren't home, a lot were that didn't answer the door. But the ones that were home don't want this. They don't want the traffic. They don't want something there that they don't need. How many times I was told, I mean, I don't know what she ran into. I ran into 4 people that refused to sign the application. One said anything would look better. Another one said the property owner has the choice of what to do with their property. One said he don't sign nothing, and the other one was just scratchy and said he'd think about it. So, but the other people don't want that. We don't want business there. We moved there to residential, and that's what we want it to stay. We don't want increased traffic, and you can't tell me that a business will not increase cars going there. They may go home, they're going to come back. They're not going to go home and stay. They're not going to go stop at the store just on their way home. They're going to go home, they're going to run up to the store. We don't want the traffic. It ends pretty well after the school business ends. Traffic still even then has increased, but we don't need extra runs going there. The kids don't need the extra traffic, and a circle would be insane with children trying to cross the streets. Just to walk up and down the road. I watch parents come with their children pushing a carriage to take the small one to school, and then to have to go back home and then come back and pick up their child. To put increased traffic on that road is not something that we want. I can just ask you not to do it. It's my neighborhood. It's not your neighborhood to decide that we need a business. It's our neighborhood. We live there. I'd like to know if you would like someone to come in and buy 2 or 3 houses in your neighborhood in a row, and then come in and petition to turn it into business. Let them put a gas station in the middle of your neighborhood. That's our neighborhood. It's residential. Let residential people do it. I'll handle the extra cars if that's what it takes to have residential. I don't want businesses across the street. You put in a Handy Mart or something, and we're going to have these kids that walk up and down the streets at night. We're going to have them hanging around over there, and we're going to pick up their trash. You put a circle in, and you're going to take my yard. I live right on the corner. I'm on the opposite lot from that corner. I don't want the traffic. I don't like the increased traffic that the schools brought, and now you want to bring more. And like I told Mr., I forget what your name is. Okay. I told him I didn't move into the city. I didn't move up where businesses were. I moved out where businesses were not. And now you want to bring those businesses to us. We don't need a Handy Mart. Orchard, Walmart, I can get to Walmart, City Market, or Safeway in 5 minutes. And most of the people there can. Maybe the people further up north would like to stop. Give them a store up there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I did have a question of her, though.
Well, we'll do questions at the end.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Brian Hosler. Can you, I forgot for Ms. Bernarski, state your name and address, please.
Oh, my name is Brian Hostler. We're at 2501 Central Avenue, so just 3 houses west of the lot we're talking about. So thank you for allowing me to speak. Bear with me, this is my first time at a meeting like this, so if I don't do anything exactly.
Nobody's watching, don't worry.
So just to confirm, if it's zone commercial, will a business, I mean, I know we put some parameters on it, but will basically a business be free to build anything at once then inside those parameters? Like, will it need to have permission to build any business, or if it's, within these 50, then you're good to go?
Do you want to, is that your only question?
That is my question, yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Mulready.
Under the recommendation that we've given you, there are no discretionary uses such as conditional use permits or special review uses. The list that's there would be permitted uses, and provided that someone came in with a site plan that showed they were meeting the necessary setbacks, the necessary height limitations, met all of the parking requirements for the size building that's going to go on there, they could move forward with construction following approval of a site plan.
Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah. That was just a big concern of mine with being residents, a residential area, and of course, like was stated, the lots of children that walk up and down there, not zoning it, not knowing what, if we would zone it, not knowing what's going to move in there necessarily. And again, traffic is a concern. We live 3 houses down, like I said. It's very common during the school hours for traffic to be backed up to Gradine there at the Lutheran Church, and that's just what we see. I don't know what it's like going down Central to the east, but so what, I'm probably making you repeat yourself, but if we would rezone it, would we give permission to a business to move in there without road changes to the road?
No. So what our hearing tonight is about is just the rezoning.
Okay.
If someone were to come with a plan to construct something, that would be a whole nother process we'd be going through, and it would have to, as they've said, abide by all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am definitely not against growth. I'm for growth for Canyon City. I would love to see Canyon City grow. I would kind of echo what the lady before me said, the part of I would really like to see the residential area stay residential. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you. So everyone keep in mind, we're just talking about the zoning tonight. We're not anticipating any building or construction or trying to figure out what that looks like tonight. It's not part of this hearing. Last request pertaining to this hearing is Betty? Krycho. Thank you, Betty. Would you like to come up still? And please state your name and address when you get to the microphone.
My name is Betty Krycho. I live at 807 Field Avenue, 2 houses from the corner. Them saying that traffic won't pick up. Our traffic is horrific now, day and night. There are times we can't get into our driveway. We can sit there for 15 minutes, morning and afternoon, and people not even let us turn into our own driveway. So I think the traffic will get worse with commercial on that corner. We moved here 15 years ago to be in a residential area, and the realtor assured us that it was going to stay residential. Shouldn't have done that, I guess. We have, like I said, traffic day and night, and in our area alone, we've seen little to no building whatsoever in that area. I'm not saying it's not, but there's been very little. We have no new trailer parks. The trailer parks that are there have been there. Sorry, I'm nervous. The kids, you have to consider them that corner with the traffic like it is already, how dangerous it would be for them. You have to remember, too, that a man was killed up the street a half a block from our house, hit and run, I believe it was, on his bicycle. That's how bad our traffic is. We have a four-way stop is already a very high congested area. The commercial building would bring even more traffic, and I'm afraid that would probably make our taxes go up, too. I'm not sure about that, but we have plenty of convenience stores around town already. We have a town of 16,000 people. We have, I believe I counted 11 convenience stores. We have 5 on our side of the highway, within a mile to mile and a half. I clocked them all. I can give you the addresses on every one of them because I checked them out. There are 6 on the other side of Highway 50. We don't have to cross the highway or go through a light to get to those or any of our 3 grocery stores that we have. So to me, that just seems a moot point. Sorry. We moved here to a small town for the peace and quiet and the slower pace of life. And I can understand the person that owns the property wants to go commercial, and I don't begrudge that for her. But in our neighborhood, it just doesn't seem right. And I think, to me personally, it seems dangerous. You have to consider, too, that when we bought our place, we bought it because we wanted residential and quiet, and it'll just be noisier. There's no way it's not. The traffic keeps us up at night that we have to turn fans and stuff on in order to be able to sleep. And I have a suggestion for the city. If they want more revenue, they can put a patrolman on our street and give tickets all day long because the people speed's that bad. They could make a lot of money just doing that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
And if you have the list of the convenience stores, I have them.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else in the audience that would like to come speak on this matter that hasn't? Okay, thank you. Any questions of the commission of the applicant or the people that came up and spoke from? Did you have?
I resolved that myself.
Okay, we've resolved that. Anything else? Yes.
I do have a question for Mr. Mulready. The picture that was passed around, as far as the adequate public notice goes, that sign appeared to be 30 feet inside the fence, 40 feet inside the fence. What constitutes adequate public notice?
Well, the sign has to be posted on property, but the code doesn't specify where It just needs to be facing the right-of-way.
But they can't see it. I had to walk right up to it to see it. 40 feet, so none of the people out there, no one hardly that I went around and saw knew about what was happening. You cannot read your sign. You give the public a notice, comes out and you can speak, they don't even know what's happening. You should be out on the street where people can see it.
Patrick, do we have to address the petition that was brought here tonight, for any reason tonight?
That is entirely up to you. That's a factor in your deliberations.
Well, I would think that that would be something that would have to be presented ahead of time, so just receiving it tonight, we really can't do anything about that. That could be something that could be brought to council, correct?
Certainly.
Since they have some time to review it, because we can't review the petition. Okay, all right, so as far as the petition goes, that's in city council's hands. So if there's no other questions, is there any other questions of the applicant, or does the applicant would like to respond to any of the concerns? Mrs. Pullen? Quickly.
My response is that everybody assumes I want to do a convenience store. Commercial zoning also allows for beauty shops, doctor's offices, professional offices, things like that with a height restriction on the buildings. A high-rise apartment building that's 10 stories high is residential, and it will generate a heck of a lot more traffic there 24 hours a day than a beauty parlor or something like that. Everybody assumes it's going to be a convenience store or something like that. Could be a doctor's office. I don't know. I'm not doing it. I'm just rezoning it to get the best potential out of that property. To me, I'd rather have something smaller go in than a high-rise apartment, but that's just my preference. I don't live there. I did do the subdivision right down the street. I have looked at traffic. I'm very familiar with stuff as far as traffic flows and things like that. This isn't the first time I've done things like this. So I understand their concerns. They'd have to take it up with whoever decides to build on that, I guess. So, but right now, they could have tremendous traffic increases and not do a single thing on this property on my part.
Okay, thank you. So are there any other questions of anybody? No, okay. So let's just keep in mind, the commission, that the current zoning doesn't solve the problem that the people that spoke tonight have. It's a change of zoning, but it doesn't change traffic problems in some future date. And then we also can't just assume that there's going to be a convenience store there. We don't know. When that time comes, you certainly can come speak again, because that will go through another process like this. So tonight, we're just talking about zoning change. So if there's no other additional questions, I'm going to close this public hearing. And I'll need a motion and a second based on the findings of fact, please.
So do I have to read the findings in fact?
You can start here.
It's not up here.
I'm sorry? No?
No, you can.
Well, in that case, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council of Canyon City, the City of Canyon City approve rezoning request for 2800 Central Avenue to C General Commercial, limited to the following list of appropriate commercial uses. Do I need to read those, or just as noted on our recommendation?
Maybe just, let's start. Sorry. That's going to be the finding. That's my fault.
So start with,
Yeah, we're starting. We'll retract that motion, please.
yeah, retract what I just read. Okay, I move that the Planning Commission adopt option, I guess I'm confused.
So
That's
we're
That's just a restatement of what I just read.
Yeah, this one, we're just going to
I
base
can
it
make
on the
that motion
findings
if you
of
want.
fact. so you can read these findings.
Before you make your motion, can I ask that you also cite findings of fact for the record as well?
Yeah, I can do that if you want.
Well, I can do it. That's what I was asking originally. Do I need to state the finding and facts?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
Would you like, okay.
But the statement, the suggested, right underneath the suggestion motion, he's got the statement there that you don't have to read the whole thing.
I'll let you do this one.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission adopt the 4 findings of facts as stated in the staff's report.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Denise, please call roll.
Is it Commissioner Harmon or Commissioner Clark?
Harmon, it's Harmon.
Yeah.
We started over.
I backed up.
Aye.
Commissioner Harmon.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Randy Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Brandon Smith.
Aye.
Okay.
Can we
Go
make
ahead.
a quick recommendation to staff that the public notice be legible from right-of-way for future reference? I think just the fact that it's posted on the property and facing the right-of-way seems insufficient.
I would concur with that. I've wondered many times what that said in there, so I would agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, thank you. Okay, so everyone knows, the second part of this is that we're just making a recommendation to City Council. So City Council will ultimately decide what happens here. So I now need a motion and a second based,
Now I can do the motion?
yes.
Okay.
For recommendation to City Council, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council for the City of Canyon City approve the rezoning request for 2800 Central Avenue to C General Commercial, limited to the following list of appropriate commercial uses. I'll just read them: accessory buildings and uses, bakery, car wash, eating and drinking establishment, financial institution, food cart or truck subject to CCMC 17.20.125 temporary use permit, gasoline station, personal services, professional offices, retail commercial use, wireless service facilities subject to CCMC 17.5.030D. No conditional use permitted, no special review uses permitted. All yard and bulk requirements remain as specified in CCMC 17.12.130C, District General Commercial Zone.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Maloney,
Aye.
Commissioner Harmon,
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux,
No.
Commissioner Shagley,
Aye.
Commissioner Brandon Smith,
No.
Motion passes. Thank you all. Item number 4B on our agenda. Oh, hello.
Hello, sorry, traffic on 25 was a nightmare.
Well, thanks for coming.
Sure.
Are you Ruth Ann?
I am Ruth Ann.
Thank you. Item 4B, rezoning 2300 block of South Street at the future intersection of South and Cone Avenue. I now open this public hearing. The provisions of the City Municipal Code and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as of set forth verbatim. Can we please have a staff report, Patrick?
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, our second public hearing this evening also involves a rezoning request. This one is for a currently unaddressed parcel located in what would be the 2300 block of South Street at the area where South Street would intersect the extension of Cone Avenue. The subject property is legally described as Lot 8, Block 9, and Lots 5 and 6, Block 10, at the Park Center Filing 1 subdivision. Collectively, these lots comprise 23.68 acres. The parcels are bisected east to west by the unbuilt South Street right-of-way and by an existing ditch. It is also bisected in part by the unbuilt section of the Cone Avenue right-of-way proceeding north from its current terminus at Leslie Lane. Lot 8, Block 9, and the westerly portion of Lots 5 and 6, Block 10, have a relatively even grade. The easterly portion of Lots 5 and 6 have an ephemeral wash located on it, and at present, other than at the existing ditch, this subject property is vacant and undeveloped, and this appears to be the first attempt of any kind to develop on this site. Subject property is currently zoned R2 medium-density residential. This zoning allows for residential uses of 4 to 8 dwelling units per acre. The R3 zoning currently abuts this site to the north and northeast. It is currently undeveloped. Immediately east of the subject site is an area of R2 zoning, which contains one single-family residence on a very large lot. The zoning to the south is primarily R1 low-density residential and consists of single-family residences built as part of the Glenfield Meadows subdivision. Zoning to the west and southwest is primarily oriented towards mobile home uses. A portion is MH1 Mobile Home Park, while a smaller portion is MH2 Mobile Home Subdivision. These exist immediately west of the subject property. These areas are fully built out for mobile home residential uses. Finally, west of the subject property and north of South Street is a city-owned park, which is currently zoned OPR, Open Space Residential. Recreational, I'm sorry. The applicant is seeking to rezone the subject property to OPR, Open Space Parks and Recreation. And this is not simply to downzone, as it is to establish other downzone so as to extinguish other land use development opportunities. As previously noted with Section 17.40 of the Canyon City Municipal Code, provides 3 criteria against which rezoning requests are evaluated. Criteria number 3 is applicable in this case because the applicant seeks not only to prevent development of the property for human occupation, but also to establish a utility installation, which is an administratively reviewed conditional use permit with the OPR zone. The applicant wishes to locate a community solar energy collection facility. This would be a new community resource which would allow local customers of Black Hills Energy to purchase proportional ownership of the energy generated and use that to buy down their electricity rates. The applicant is proposing, as part of their administrative conditional use permit, to locate 2 solar panel arrays on either side of South Street right-of-way. This array would be connected directly to the Black Hills Energy grid. Individual customers will not be running power lines to the solar panels to collect energy. The applicant is also seeking a vacation of the Cone Avenue right-of-way through this site. This vacation would allow them to move the southerly array to the west and have it line up with the east and west extensions of the northerly array. Access to both arrays will come from the existing South Street right-of-way. The applicant indicated it will only be visited by maintenance staff approximately once every 2 to 3 months. The applicant has proposed a 7-foot Stay Tough brand fabric fence around the perimeter of both arrays, and you see pictures of those examples here. Staff has spoken with the applicant about using a more opaque type of privacy fence, but the applicant has resisted this suggestion, citing aesthetic concerns. Finally, it should be noted that the existing ditch will not be touched as it is preserved within its own easement. The applicant will have to bridge the ditch in order to provide vehicular access to the northerly array. And with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission cite the 4 findings of fact as included in the staff report as a certification of Canyon City's jurisdiction to act on the request to rezone the 2300 block of South Street to OPR, Open Space Parks and Recreation. Staff also recommends Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve the request to rezone the 2300 block of South Street to OPR Open Space Parks and Recreation. That would conclude the staff presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions the Planning Commission may have. Also present to speak on behalf of this application is Angela Bellantoni of Environmental Alternatives and the ultimate property owner, Raphael Schiffman of Creative Energy Collective?
Clean Energy
Collective, sorry.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have a question, Patrick. The resistance to the more barrier fences, what again?
The complaint that, well, when we mentioned that we would like to see a more opaque privacy type fence, we were told that because this could go for such durations of time where there was no one on site to take a look at it, in strong winds and inclement weather, if the fence became damaged, it would stay that way for periods of time and would look rather unattractive. So they cited aesthetic concerns as to why they were proposing this particular type of fence.
Okay, thank you.
Another concern with an opaque fence is security, so no one can see what's going on inside.
Well, and that's
So without
basically one of
someone
the reasons I
active,
asked that
yeah.
question. And one of my concerns would be this is bordering the park.
Yeah.
So that would, and it's a very active park, skate park, and anyway, thank you.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Mr. Mulready, the owner is not the applicant. Is the owner in agreement with proposed zoning change?
The owner, I believe, and the applicant can speak more to this, is in the process of selling the property to the prospective buyer, Clean Energy Collective.
We'll get clarification on that when you come up, Angela. So if there's no other questions, maybe we can bring the applicant up. Or are we good?
Cool, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. And just, yeah, I'll clear that up just up front. So the Smith family owns the property, and we've entered a lease option agreement for a 20-year lease of that property. So they would still maintain ownership of the property, and we'd be leasing the area in which we would, basically within our fence line, would be leased from them. So just to introduce you to what we call roofless solar, community solar. It's an optimally located off-grid solar facility that supplies renewable energy to the power grid. Black Hills Energy, who's also here tonight if you have utility-specific questions, awarded CEC 2 megawatts at this specific location out of an unknown number of respondents. We submitted about 5 different sites in and around Cannon City. There were other people who submitted, responded to the RFP. We don't know how many they were, but out of a relatively large number, this was the site that the utility awarded the project. Let's see. We've entered into a power purchase agreement to provide electricity to the utilities community under the Utility Community Solar Garden program. So we've Clean Energy Collective and Black Hills Energy have entered a power purchase agreement in which they would buy the energy from this facility. And we're proposing construction of the community solar garden in Cannon City at a site leased from the Smith family, and rezoning to open space parks and recreation, or OPR, would be the first step in that process. A little more about CEC. We've been around 9 years. We have 80 employees. We've had quite a bit of growth in that time. We have strong financial backing. We're active in 16 states. We've worked with about 33 utilities. We just passed our 100 megawatts online threshold, and we've got quite a few more megawatts either under construction or in development. The founder of our company basically came up with the concept of community solar and has, developed it, and that's where it all started. So community solar garden, specifically this project, This is Black Hill Energy's 4th community solar garden developed by Clean Energy Collective. There's a few more than that out there. Program participants in Fremont County or adjacent counties can receive on-bill credits which lower their electricity bills. Black Hills Energy releases 2.5 megawatts of capacity each year, and so under the 2017 RFP is when this capacity was awarded to Clean Energy Collective. The programs are really successful. The demand far, far, far outweighs the availability of online capacity. There's long wait lists for these programs when they come up. Cannon City has actually entered a contract for 40% of the project capacity. Remaining capacity is 15% and likely to be contracted if it's not already. Just to highlight some of the benefits to the community, Cannon City specifically would save, based on our conversations with the city previously in this agreement, $17,867 in year one, and a bit over $980,000 over the 20 years of the program. And the same would go for Pueblo Community College, who's also signed up for another 40% of the array. The Posada Housing Authority has signed up for 5, so they would stand to save $2,200 in the first year and $122,000 over the term of the program. So of that 15% available, there's another $7,000 in savings, $367,000 in savings over the life of the program. So that is to say, a financial benefit to the community through participation in the program. So now to get into a little bit more specifics about the project. Development would have limited access to the site, restricted with it's actually 7-foot game fence. And we are in discussions with the Fruitland Ditch Company, which does run across the property. If they were amenable to it, we would fence in the entire area, including the ditch. Otherwise, we would fence in the north and south sections separately. Feedback that we've gotten from the community is that sometimes there's a lot of trespassing on this property, as well as sometimes trash winding up in the ditch. So sort of a side community benefit could be just the fencing in of the area. Should it encapsulate the entire area and go across the South Street right-of-way, it would potentially have a improvement on any trespassing or trash, especially ending up in the ditch in that area. And I'll just touch on the fence again while I brought it up. The reason why the opaque fence is less desirable, not so much that, because we're not going to maintain it. If something happened with the fence and someone called the number that's posted on the fence, we'd get out there to fix it. It's more that a brand new cedar fence just doesn't look that great after 5-10 years, and we've actually seen the opposite. And then the other is a safety concern. We've had in other communities, the sheriff specifically ask it to not be an opaque fence because now you've got a large area that nobody can see what's going on inside of it. So just continuing along here. Operations and maintenance is typically done quarterly, and that just involves 1 to 2 people out on site for roughly a day. And so it's certainly not going to become any sort of high traffic site, and there's certainly not going to be lots of crew members descending on the site on a regular basis. Owner information and contact is posted at the fence at all times. And we touched upon the surrounding uses, but it includes residential, parks and open space, and additional undeveloped lots. So again, we're proposing rezoning to open space, parks and recreation to allow for this use as step 1 in the 3-step process Patrick described in the staff report. So this is, you guys in your staff report saw the layout where we stayed to the east of the Cone Avenue right-of-way. I'm just showing you all, should we proceed with the vacation of the right-of-way, that's more representative of what the project would look like.
Raphael, can you get closer to the mic? Sorry.
Apologies.
Thank you.
We Also note, in some of our site diligence, as you'll see, Lot 6 over there on the east side has some potential drainage issues. And so part of the reason why it could benefit the city for the vacation of the right-of-way is that the Smiths would be willing to sell Lot 6 to the city at no cost so that the city could use Lot 6 for future stormwater mitigation, which I understand is desirable by city staff. To get into more of the just specs of the system, it's just under 2 megawatts DC, 1 3/4 megawatt AC. The enclosed fenced area would be approximately 14 acres. Project would consist of around 5,600 solar panels, each 350 watts, 35 50 kilowatt inverters. On the layout where you see the northern access road, that's where that equipment would be situated. The inverters, that is, the panels obviously are on that array. It's a single axis tracker, which means throughout the day it rotates slowly to maximize production. And there's an also energy data acquisition system. It's being monitored 24/7. If there's issues, things like that, we can respond. And just as a fun fact, 2 megawatts of capacity produces approximately the needs of 400 homes. And just one more time, development step 1 would be the rezoning request that we're making. And here's a picture of our Holy Cross array. I believe that's Holy Cross 3, the third array that we did for Holy Cross Energy. It's just a close-up shot of what a typical array looks like when it's built. And then this is our Lake County array, and so just another shot of what it looks like in the morning when the trackers are facing east. And then now I'll open it up to questions.
All right, thank you. Questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Where was that Holy Cross put up?
Do you know the exact location? It's yeah.
Just to the east.
Thank you.
Yeah, behind the high school, actually.
Councilman Hamrick.
Sure, just a question. So for these arrays that are going to be tracking, kind of rotating along the axis, have there been, where these are installed close to residential areas, have there been glare issues associated with these panels?
So we haven't actually had glare issues in the sense of a particular, like an issue that needed to be mitigated in that sense. Because it's a tracker, it's moving. So if it's creating a glare, it's creating that glare for about 15 minutes at a certain time of day, at a certain time of year. So nothing where it's like, I always have a glare every afternoon, I can't look out my living room window sort of thing. And also just to address the glare question, because, the glare would be going off to the northeast and northwest. So it's going toward the park and it's going toward like undeveloped areas as well, so.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is this site scalable if Black Hills were to allow additional capacity?
No, and that's not necessarily Black Hills' call. It's a Public Utility Commission statute in that community solar gardens you cannot have adjacent gardens located within half a mile of each other, and that's really just a rule so that someone doesn't award a bunch of capacity and put 5 2-megawatt sites right next to each other and make a huge commercial array, is my understanding. So the statute prevents that. And also there could be some just technical constraints of how much the grid could handle at one location.
And then there was some discussion of fencing the entirety of the site, both north and south, but South Street right-of-way is not on the table for abandonment, so that would not actually occur, correct?
No, so we would do that by license agreement. So it would be that way until such time that South Street needed to be built. And then at that time, they would have to change their fencing.
And does the roadway improvement on the right-of-way follow the same suit, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be some large development to the east that would have to drive that improvement someday in the future. So it's likely it's going to be in the condition it is for a long time.
Okay, but their improvements on the right-of-way are fine with the city?
Yes.
Presumably?
Yep, we handle that by license agreement, yep.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
We have one request to speak to the commission. If Jim Smith is here, if you'd like to come up. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Jim Smith. I'm at 405 Del Rey. That's where my wife and I live, and my wife and I own this property. And we've been working with Raphael for a number of years now, trying to establish this solar garden. And we feel that it will benefit the whole city, not only just us and Clean Energy Collective and Black Hills. I think that anybody who signs up for this will benefit from it. Raphael gave you the numbers, and it could be a boon to a lot of people. So we are excited about trying to get this done, and we appreciate anything you can do. Also, one thing that Ms. Hamrick mentioned, I think, was about the glare. And I might call your attention to Colorado Springs going down right next to the freeway down I-25. There is an array that is probably 6-8 times the size of the one we're going to put in. So it doesn't seem like there's any problem up there. And well, actually, that's all I got to say, and I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the audience? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Burl McCullough, and I live at 899 Field. My property is adjacent to the Smith property. I own that large lot with the single-family dwelling. That's my 10 acres. That's my pasture. So I'm here as a property owner, concerned. I also recently became the president of Fruitland Water Company, the ditch company, and we want to make sure that we have a voice. And this is my vice president, Jerry Butts. We're here representing the ditch.
A little closer.
We're representing the ditch's interest, which is our job. We have concern that water law in Colorado gives us easement or right-of-way on both sides of the ditch. And for one, that fencing across the ditch would be, if we need to go in there and do repairs or improvements, that's going to be a problem. So we want to be a part of those discussions. And just as a property owner, we're all aware that you do something, you start a project, and there's always unintended consequences. And I don't know what those are, but I'm concerned. One of them is how much traffic's going to come in there. I know what they say, that'll be minimal, but, things change. And what other unintended consequence will there be from that being right next to my property? I don't want it to affect my property value, so. And I'm not opposed to the solar array at all. That's all I have. Mr. Did you?
Yeah. I'm Jerry Butts. I live at 1510 South Street, and I'm the vice president of the ditch. And Raphael did come to us and talk to us, and the board didn't feel like we had an issue as long as, like Burl said, we didn't have any unintended consequences. They do talk about a bridge across the ditch, and we just want to make sure it doesn't impact the ditch in any way, and we need to have access. So the fence straddling the ditch would probably not fly as far as we're concerned. We'd rather see it, it's right now 15 feet from the center line of the ditch both ways, north and south. And it's just mainly so we can have access. But there is a temporary ditch or a temporary bridge now that Mr. Smith has closed off, which we really appreciated because every time it rains, somebody'd be out there four-wheeling and prior to his ownership, and they'd end up in the ditch or tearing up the bridge. And we didn't put the bridge on there, a former property owner did, but we had thought about removing it. So the bridge now is not usable, it's not functional. He fenced it, put a gate there so nobody go across it, and that's really helped us. But if they do, Raphael had talked about putting a temporary bridge there, and I realize it's a 20-year project, but we just don't want it to affect the ditch. And it's a concrete ditch, and the past bridge did affect it by settling and caved in the concrete, so we had to fix that. So as long as we don't have any adverse effects on it, we were basically good with the proposition. I like the idea. We spend $1,000 a week on power for our pump. We pump off the hydraulic ditch. We're just a lateral. And then once it gets up by 9th Street, by the liquor store, it goes gravity, but we have to pump it up. So we spend $1,000 a week during the summertime, during our watering season, just to pump the water so we can have irrigation water. So we would love to see something like that if we could benefit from it. I don't know that we can, but I think it's a good idea to have renewable energy. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I'll see if he wants to address. Raphael, did you want to address their concerns so that we can have it on the record?
I appreciate everything that the ditch company said, and we enter a crossing agreement with them that is like an agreement that we're held to that basically says we can't interfere with the ditch. If we do, we owe them X amount of dollars per day because of water that they couldn't deliver. They have to, before we can start construction, they have to do an engineering review of our plans of what's going in, and we reimburse them for that review. So we certainly are, and if you look at our layouts, we definitely are respecting the right-of-way on either side of it. So we, as he mentioned, approached them early on in the development process, and we're totally fine keeping them happy. And it's not just something I'm saying. We have to enter a ditch crossing agreement with them so that we're obligated to do so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Eddie Newby. I live at 836 Chantilly Place. And my question is, stormwater runoff on this deal. So all the houses that are down there were all fighting water. And the way that it's developed, everybody's spitting water out on top of everybody. And I'm just wondering, whenever it rains like a son of a gun, where's all that water going to go? Now, there's a pond at the end of Chantilly Place, but I don't think that retainer pond is big enough. So that's my only question.
Patrick, do we want to address that, or Mr. Lancaster?
Yeah, so essentially what they're talking about building here will have little impact to existing runoff. The benefit would be if we move forward with the vacation and swap some of the property with the Smiths, then the city can take advantage of the property to the east where there need to be some improvements made that would protect the area he's talking about.
Okay. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Applicant?
I have one.
Go ahead.
What might be your time frame if all this is approved, goes to the city council, and all the permits are done? What is the time frame?
So we would, if approved, we would probably start construction in mid-April at the earliest. And it's construction, so when I say the earliest, probably won't be mid-April. But that would be the earliest we could start. And then, we wouldn't be starting, I would think, any later than June. But again, it's construction, so there could be some crucial piece of equipment that's delayed in being delivered. But that said, it'd be our intention to be starting in the April-May range. The actual construction cycle is about 60 days. So we get in there, just like quick overview on that. It's, you get in there, we drive piles, we put the racking off that, and then there's electrical. So there's 3-ish weeks of actual what a casual observer would say construction, and then a lot of it is panel placement, wiring, which is pretty, you might not realize that there's even construction activity.
So it could be done by the fall, if all goes well.
We'd like it to be done by October at the latest.
And as far as maintenance, is there going to be someone, not necessarily on site, but at least within Fremont County, or where will you come from if somebody gets this call that a deer jumped the fence and is racking all the solar panels?
Sure. So probably Colorado Springs is where the maintenance subcontractor would be at. That hasn't been established yet. We typically would subcontract O&M to someone that is nearby because it's in our interest to respond quickly to anything. If it's not producing power, we're not receiving credits from the utility. Our customers aren't receiving credits. So we typically respond to an issue within about 24 to 48 hours. And I couldn't answer where that person would be coming from. Colorado Springs would be my best guess at this time.
It's best that it's an open space rather than commercial? Is that how it's?
Well, because of Canyon City Code, open space has as a public utility is already an approved conditional use.
And I can explain a little bit on that. Under the OPR zone district, I think it was intended that because you might be establishing kind of passive use recreation or open space corridors, there could be a need for some sort of a utility installation. Sometimes that might be undergrounded, sometimes that might be above ground, but the idea was you shouldn't be able to prohibit utilities going into OPR, therefore it's made a conditional use, subject to a conditional use permit.
I was just trying to lead. It might solve Miss Irish person over here. I forgot your name, ma'am. Marie. Well, I was just thinking the previous owner, maybe Miss Pullen, could go from a commercial to an OPR, and then we could put another solar panel over there, and that way you wouldn't have the aesthetics blocking your view, and that would solve everybody's problem. We'd have more energy, and maybe you can go. So I was just thinking maybe you won't have that high rise or a liquor store or anything else there. You could have solar panels, and it'd be great. Solve it too.
Did we get a little off topic?
I mean, if you're, yeah, I'm sorry. Just
Okay.
Well, I do have one question about the fencing. And we talked a little bit earlier about the fence, and like a cedar fence, I agree 100%. Cedar fence looks great for about 3 or 4 years. There's ways to prevent that, but it still doesn't resolve the whole issue. My biggest concern is, and we talked earlier, and I forget who made the discussion, and maybe even been you, about trash blowing through. And if you're frequenting that place maybe once or twice a month, that's a heavily windy area through that. I can't imagine once or twice a month is going to do it for taking garbage off the fence. That property collects a lot of trash, and I think the property owner can verify that. I'd be concerned about that type of fence if you're worried about trash, and that was one of the high points you commented about improving it. The other side of that would be, I'd have to ask the gentleman, how frequently do they access that ditch for maintenance, monitoring, and for flow? Because if you're talking 3-4 times a week, fencing the entire thing across what doesn't exist at this time, C Street, would hinder that unless you had quite an extensive wide gate.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys thumbs down on encompassing the whole thing, correct? Yeah, so.
Okay, so that's not.
That was just if they were into it, we do it because the city seemed to appreciate that would prevent trespassing, but that's off the table now. So we will not be enclosing the ditch. Each array would be separately fenced.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Shagley.
Well, I had a question also for him, though. That picture makes it look very aesthetically nice, and I agree with what your question was, Randy, is if
they don't go in very often to take care of it. Isn't that a tumbleweed, open area, lots of weeds growing, and yeah, so along with the rubbish blowing in and so on. I think I'm just a little bit concerned for the aesthetics of the place. I can't imagine it looking like that, but it seems like we would need more than every couple of months or once quarterly or whatever maintenance on the property. I'd like to know it's going to look like that. That's grass planted and mowed. It looks very nice.
Commissioner, are you asking me or?
Oh, no, I was trying to ask him before he left. I'm sorry.
So I'm afraid I don't have a great answer for that, but I'm a little confused. When I was speaking about trash, it was in just feedback from the ditch company that quote-unquote trash ends up in the ditch, and that if we fenced it in, that would prevent trash from getting in the ditch.
Okay.
I mean, I've spent a bit of time there, and I haven't looked and been like, man, there's a lot of trash here. I appreciate that it's windy and that I guess currently the trash just blows all the way across it, and our fence would prevent that from happening. I guess the idea being that our contact information is on the fence. If a neighbor or if the city finds that there's trash piling up along the fence, then give us a call. I mean, that's the best answer I can say, but I can't speak to the quantity of trash that's going to pile up. And when we're there quarterly for maintenance, it's not for trash removal. It's for just regular periodic maintenance. And our O&M guys don't come back with like tons of trash in the backs of their trucks from it accumulating on our sites.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before I close the public hearing? Okay, thank you. And I'll close the public hearing. Doesn't sound like there's any further discussion. So now I need a motion and a second based upon the findings of fact.
Mr. Chairman, I move the Planning Commission adopt the 4 findings of fact as stated in the staff report above.
A second.
Second, Commissioner Ledoux. Any further discussion? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Harmon?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Brandon Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Hey.
Okay, motion passes. Now I'd need a motion and a second for recommendations to City Council, please.
And I will make that motion as well. I move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council of the City of Canyon City approve the rezoning request for the 2300 block of South Street at the future intersection of South Street and Cone Avenue to OPR, Open Space Parks and Recreation Zone District.
Second.
Thank you. Second, Commissioner Ledoux. Any further discussion? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Harmon?
Aye.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Brandon Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation tonight. We appreciate you being here. Okay, we have item 4C, which is a resolution number 1, series of 2019. Resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, approving certain amendments to the subdivision regulations for the City of Canyon City concerning stormwater and drainage easements. And then you are here to discuss
Yep.
that?
That one's mine.
Let me open this up, and then I'll let you take it.
Okay.
All right. Open this public hearing. The provisions of the City Municipal Code, and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as if set forth verbatim. Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Take it away.
Sure. So some of you may recall back in 2017, we rolled back a lot of our exactions that we had for development applications. And recently we've identified that an unintended consequence of that was that we were not reserving existing drainage areas for the lower level applications. So easements for stormwater were only applicable to major subdivisions and site plan applications. And so City Council brought it to our attention that, I think it was the minor subdivision on Central that brought it up, where there was an existing drainage course, and there was no required mitigation for that drainage or easement. And so it was recommended that we bring you a resolution to make that change, to bring that with some changes back into the subdivision regulations. So that's essentially what the resolution is. The city attorney prepared some language that essentially says if there's an existing water course within the project, that the applicant has to, without a change or a mitigation to that, let's say they rebuilt a channel somewhere else to make it work better or something like that, that aside, they would have to provide an easement for that facility. And so the resolution has all the sections that are applicable for each one of those types of development applications to make that apply. And so if you guys pass this resolution, then the next step would be then to take it to City Council for an ordinance change. So that's it in a nutshell, unless you have any questions.
Any questions of staff? Everybody. Okay, let's go. Commissioner Clark, you go.
Well, I have, how does this impact things like, I can't even think of the subdivision now. Up on the hill.
Dawson Ranch?
Dawson Ranch, yes.
Well, it doesn't impact it now because it's already done. So, but it would have impacted it during the application stage, where a lot of the water courses up in Dawson Ranch are not within any types of easements. And so the city's left with circumstances where they can't use those easements, or they have to negotiate new easements for that.
But it would affect it in the future? If there was
Not in the future, it won't affect it at all, unless there's a future land use application for something.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, and that's what I was getting at, if they extend that.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Harmon?
That kind of answered my question. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Commissioner Ledoux?
Yeah, I guess, granted, it says wherever possible, and then it goes into the landscaped banks. Is that, I mean, do the banks really need to be landscaped? And, is natural vegetation adequate? And like I said, admittedly, it says
Yeah, I guess
wherever
that, I mean, I could talk with the attorney about that. I'm not sure what maybe the intent on was for that term, landscape. Landscape can mean a lot of things.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean, groomed Kentucky blue, but I see your point.
Exactly. Okay. And then the second point being the maximum potential volume of flow, somewhat arbitrary. Do we need to quantify that?
We don't know how much that is.
Yeah,
But for purposes of an easement,
right.
I mean, the maximum potential volume is, to your point, unknown.
Intentionally
Does
vague.
the entirety of the property.
From my point of view,
Here we go.
intentionally vague is probably a good idea.
What's that?
From my point of view, intentionally vague is probably a good idea.
That one that we had up there last July in Dawson was, I don't even think it was maximum, but it was very detrimental to
Right.
all
on
the
the other
ditches
hand-
up there, so.
If it's vague and it's then kept small or large, I mean, it's got its own issues.
Yeah, to that point, what I would recommend then is historic flow. I mean, since in our other development applications, we do require detention to historic flow, we're talking about existing water courses. So maybe it should say that.
And is that, what is the subdivision regulation? Is it 1% annual chance, or is it something
Yeah, 100
else?
years, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess my suggestion would be to go ahead and cite that. If that is the intention, give it that specific
Okay.
attribute.
Councilman Emmerich?
Thank you for hanging around, guys. Looks like we lost all our audience here.
I'm boring.
So if you have the current language, the easement shall conform substantially to the banks of the drainage way. So if you've got, if we look back at the last subdivision that we approved where we took the one lot and broke it down into 5 individual lots. There was actually kind of a drainage way that went kitty corner across one of the lots.
Right.
Okay, so, but if you had that, what flexibility, Adam, would you have to reroute what might be almost sheet flow, but not quite, it might be channelized? What flexibility would you have to reroute that? I mean, would you have to divide the property, have an easement to go diagonal across your property?
Right, I mean, so the best option, so this, what this is at a minimum. This is if they, because again, at those, especially those lower level development applications, they're not doing any engineering typically. But, so at a minimum, this is what they have to provide. In that case, that may be detrimental to what they're trying to do to benefit the property for subdivision. So they would have to then mitigate that. And then, so this would not really necessarily apply, because then they would be providing something that gets approved through our office, which is, here's what we're designing, and here's going to be an easement for that in the future.
So in what I understand, let me rephrase that. What I understand is that this really doesn't tie the applicant's hand to existing topography necessarily, that they can propose project-specific alternatives that would be considered by the city.
That's correct.
Thank you.
I guess I do have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So this is, in some respects, I guess you could say this is a reintroduction of code that we took out. Is it substantially different from previous? Are there?
It's more descriptive of what the easement is for. Before it just said easement for stormwater.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it did add a lot of description.
But as far as payment for it, owners come in, and they want to do a PUD or something, and they've got to pay for this easement, correct?
No, there's no payment. They're giving it to the city.
They're giving it, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Misunderstood that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess, just to clarify one thing, we're going to add to this the 100-year flood?
I would recommend, this is my recommendation based on the question there. So the very last sentence would say, wherever possible, it is desirable that the drainage be maintained by an open channel with stabilized banks, scratch landscape and say stabilized, and adequate width.
Where are you reading from?
The very last sentence of the language in the memo.
This page.
The resolution itself. Okay. Right before the signature, or the date.
And then it'd be adequate width for conveyance of the 1% annual historic flow.
And if we don't require detention on the small subdivision, should it be 1% annual chance future flow? If they develop, change their, enough, but they don't have to do a study, right? Because it is small enough.
That's correct. So when I was referring to the detention, so historic flow would be, let's say there's upstream property that develops in the future where there could be a potential increase in this flow. There shouldn't be because of those requirements for detention.
The small site itself would potentially increase that discharge, although admittedly it's a small enough site, probably doesn't
That's
change
true.
anything, but
That's true.
for this purpose, perhaps including.
Right. But we're going to pick a number. I mean, I kind of like your idea, pick a number in time, and that's what it is. And it's a big step forward from what we have currently, without burdening them with some vague something in the future.
So, Adam, the two corrections we have so far is we're removing landscaped, and we're adding a different word in there.
Yeah, so landscape will be stabilized.
With stabilized banks.
Yeah.
And there was one other change.
And then it'll say adequate width for conveyance of the 1% annual historic flow. That sound good, Brian?
Annual chance.
Annual
We wanna
chance.
be
Annual chance, 100-year flood, right? Anything else? Do we need to do the two motions and recommendation to city council on this, or do we?
Yeah, you could just do the motion with the change.
Just do the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll close this public hearing. So I now need a motion and a second on the request based upon the findings.
I can make that.
Commissioner Ledoux?
I move that Planning Commission adopt resolution number 01, series of 2019, with the 2 changes discussed previously.
Do we need to restate those changes?
We have those in the notes.
Okay.
Now, I'll second that.
Commissioner Clark, second. Any further? Denise, please call roll.
Commissioner Ledoux?
Aye.
Commissioner Clark?
Aye.
Chairman Maloney?
Aye.
Commissioner Herman?
Aye.
Commissioner Shagley?
Aye.
Commissioner Brandon Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Randy Smith?
Aye.
Okay, passes. Do we make a recommendation to council, or that's all we have?
No, that's what the resolution does, and, yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'm surprised everybody left for you.
I know.
I thought for sure.
Well, this is what it normally looks like in here.
I was wondering.
Any announcements or anything going on anybody needs to talk about tonight? No? Okay, thank you all. Meeting adjourned.